It doesn't feel quite okay. We're live streaming. Yes, me again. I think we should be on the PSOL YouTube. If people who see this could share it on other platforms, that'd be really good, because I'm now co-host. But if so reflections on today's hearing. What do people think?
Oh, it's been a really long day. It's been a lot of listening, a lot of very intent listening, but a lot more interesting than yesterday, has to be said.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Less offensive, at least.
Yeah, at least in the afternoon, that's for sure. Yeah. It's been a really long day. It's been a lot of listening.
Oh. Well, you say it was less offensive. It was still pretty gruesome.
Oh, yeah. Gruesome. Yeah. Certainly gruesome.
God, listening to all that stuff about the culture and the quotes from like police commissioners from the 1970s talking about women. I mean, it's just horrible.
I wasn't really sure whether that was like old stuff or the more recent stuff, because it kind of sounded the same.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of when they published the extracts from that WhatsApp group out of Charing Cross Police Station.
Very much.
But it was a different era then.
Child mortality was higher, women knew their place, and the police didn't have to obey the law.
I mean, I still... Sorry, I mean, there's so much to pick apart there, but I just still can't quite believe that they actually used the fact that child mortality was higher to suggest that people didn't care as much about their dead children's identities being stolen. Like, did they really suggest that?
They really did. They really did. Total bastards. Yeah.
Can I just ask if it's definitely...
it's definitely streaming. Yeah, it works.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like everybody's watching this, it's not just me. You can probably just see my face. And that was not my intention. There's lots of other people here.
Behind you, Tom.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You're going to have to just accept that you're the face.
Yeah, it would appear so. But hopefully others will join us who are willing to share their face. So, but please, everybody talk. I'm trying. Oh, there we go. Look, Evelyn. Yeah, she shows her face. Thank God for that. Break up the monotony in my face. Yeah.
It's very loud. Something else I didn't expect that I would be doing whilst watching the public inquiry was Googling that awful slang phrase that I can't believe I'd never heard it. I don't even want to repeat it.
I mean, I'm not going to repeat it, but somebody should, so people know what we're talking about.
So the police commissioner and various other, but it seemed to be a very common term used to describe women by the police in the 1970s was...
And 80s. I've got to be honest, and 90s. Yeah.
Was split arses. I'd never heard that term before. And I mean, I have to say they had this idea that women walk around with a hole in their arse, and I was really struck by the idea that men felt that they didn't have a hole in their arse, and that might explain why they were so full of shit. But no, jokes aside, it was really, really gruesome listening to that. Just the attitudes, and that so many different sources and just so similar over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And these are and so timely at the moment. And when you think of Cressida Dick telling the women of London that if they're worried that a police officer is a threat to their safety, they should flag down a bus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That's the chilling thing, that at the moment we're listening to them talk about the 70s and the 80s at exactly the same time that all the stuff is coming out about the today's culture in the Met. I mean, and it's just all the same. This idea that things were different then or that things are different now it's just being, you know, proved wrong day after day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like they've got two directions of like different in the past. It's like, oh yeah, Chris, you're with us. You are live on the internet, by the way, if you want to like straighten your tie. And it looks, just keep your hands where we can see them, because it looks a bit, you know,
loose.
Yeah, the two directions of like, oh, you know, like is, you know, but back then it was a different world, and like, you know, obviously different standards, but nowadays standards obviously are much worse. We weren't as bad as we are now back then. It's just like, what the fuck.
Yeah, crazy. I guess you know, it's quite easy to talk about the later submissions in the day, but maybe yeah, going back, I found it very moving, again, them talking about the dead children's identities, and there was just a really, yeah, powerful sort of summing up, wasn't there, by, I think, was it Fiona Murphy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fiona Murphy was very good speaker, so if anybody wants to go back and listen, what was it that she described? Sorry, I'm just trying to find my notes. What did she describe the STS as in the end?
A lot of things, but
oh yeah, a lawless clique of youth undercover officers deployed under the cover of deceased children's identities, and that she said that they were as unlawful and unconstitutional as they were unethical and immoral.
Yeah, I guess it's really like this whole thing of like this family who are not allowed to use their own name. I find it really,
yeah,
you know, like
that's shocking. Yeah,
I still can't quite believe it, even though it, like, I know it's like, what the fuck, you know, what kind of,
and it's crazy.
Do you want to explain that a bit, Tom?
Well, I guess, you know, we get to choose our own level of anonymity. You know, I get to say that I want anonymity, and then I get to use that and use my voice how I want. But this family have got absolutely no choice whatsoever, because if anybody knows who they are, then that gives away the identity of the undercover officer that used their child's identity as a cover. And in order to protect him, they can't speak publicly, they can't access any support. It's just disgusting.
And that's only protecting this officer's cover name, not his.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just unbelievable. The injustice in it is incredible.
This guy stole the identity of their child, and then in order to protect him or her, but almost certainly him, they are not allowed to tell anybody even that they are involved in this process. It's just, I mean, over and over and over again, the inquiry puts the needs of these abusive police officers before their victims, but it is one of the most shocking and flagrant examples.
And I thought it was quite dignified the way that it was brought up. It was just like, they want to be referred to as the restricted family, so they're making very clear that the restriction is being put on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it makes me realize my privilege to be able to choose how much I expose myself in public, and how much I can still speak, I can still use my voice, but they're not allowed in any way. They're not even allowed the support of the other families.
Yeah, obscene.
I think you're right to highlight that. I think it's been a bit lost, really. I think.
I'm surprised it can't be challenged, but then again, the only way to challenge it is to break it.
Can I say something about history?
Please do.
Yes.
And the importance of it, and what we're going to do with all this stuff, right? Really, when it comes, when it's all together and they have reported. Because I think what's been really, really good today in the Category H statement, and also is it Category F that those families were talking about, was for the category H, how the misogyny that we're seeing now in the press goes right back, how that culture was established through that document we're talking about from 1983, how that culture was established, and that's what we're now that's what we're now reaping, you know, the consequences of it, isn't it? It's exactly that. And also that detail about 1883 that was in the category F stuff. Some parliamentary committee, was it, in 1883?
Yeah, it was.
That made really clear that some, you know, that police spies had to just observe, and like this idea that somehow it's new and woke and fashionable to care about anything and to have any kind of moral compass. I thought that was all really important. So with all that in mind, the challenge, I think, for us is going to be really to make sure it doesn't happen again, because we're seeing that it's happened repeatedly. And this idea that it's all historic, it's just not historic. You know, we've got evidence of women from 2015, and we've been arguing, you know, we've been in this inquiry since 2014. So, you know, that it's very current, and it's really important to show what the history teaches us, but that doesn't mean this is just history. And so I think it's about reform of the CHIS Act and securing a commitment from, you know, parliamentarians and decision makers that they will, in light of all this, that they will reform the CHIS Act, which has effectively legalised all this stuff. And also clearly REPA needs some kind of, you know, looking at. And there has to, and the sex by deception stuff that, you know, that is it, the Criminal Law Reform Network put out a new report about proposed new legislation about sex by deception. And I think within the other thing is seeing this within from two dimensions. Firstly, this is an investigation into 5% of undercover policing in this country. And the other 95%, no one's going to argue about the legitimacy or otherwise of the targets, but the tactics, if these are the tactics, how many other women and how many other people are affected? And the context as well, as I said at the beginning, about current examples of horrific police misogyny and police abuse of women. And I think it's really important that those connections are made, and that those connections are made to the public.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. It all seems so obvious to us that it speaks, that it's speaking to now. But then, you know, if you tune in, they're talking about the 1780s. It's not, that link isn't necessarily obvious to everyone else. And we do need to keep making that. And yeah, I mean, with all the shocking stories of the undercover police in Spain, even though it's Barcelona, it's Catalonia and the Spanish state, and it's not here, but it's so recent. It's 2020, and it's using the same tactics.
2022, the guy disappeared.
Yeah.
2020, sorry, he was sent in. Yeah. So it's just unbelievable to think that it's not happening now here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that, you know, there's so much of, even though this is all like kind of historic stuff we've been talking about, you know, as 68 to 82 or whatever, but the connections with the current day are really what's, you know, makes it also important, isn't it? And like, it's just so much the fucking same. Like, I mean, like so much, honestly, but we mentioned it already, but the parallels with that Charing Cross WhatsApp group stuff with that police in action report, it was just like, nothing's fucking changed.
Exactly. And it's the culture this is the whole point, isn't it? The culture was established then, and it's just continued. Like, this is where they kind of hope, you know, this is when they set all of that kind of thing up and running.
Yeah. Going back to the speeches from first thing this morning.
Yeah.
The lawyer representing Celia Stubbs.
Yes.
And
Sam Jacobs.
The video that was shown.
Oh fuck yeah, man! The actual funeral. Jesus fucking Christ! Whoa!
And what happened? Because my understanding was that one of the police lawyers kind of pulled those videos out in their defense yesterday.
Yeah.
And she had no idea that they existed.
Right. Yeah. So he pulled out 13 videos, I think it was.
They still are.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. They are sending her videos of and putting them in the public domain of her, attending her partner's funeral that she hadn't even seen before.
I'm surprised they let that in. Sorry.
Yeah, they haven't sent them to her before.
No, Friday. She's on Friday for the first time.
Oh my God. We were talking about this before, but I teared up almost seeing that. It's so, so much about it. Her partner was killed. The funeral was spied on. It was infiltrated by several undercover officers because you never know. It's a fucking funeral. And you've heard so much about it, and actually seeing it and seeing a very young Celia Stubbs getting flowers from teachers. I even remembering it makes me. I didn't even know her before all this. How must it be for her to just, to get that smashed in her face? And can you explain me? Because I didn't listen yesterday. How was this supposed to be in the defense of the police?
Yeah, so basically Oliver Saunders presented, I think there's 13 of them. They're available to download now from the event page from yesterday on the Undercover Policing Inquiry website. He basically selected a bunch of footage of public order incidents, which he said proved, I don't know if you've seen his submissions, but he painted a picture of, Daddy's not coming home tonight. He's in hospital because he's had to deal with being punched, kicked, spat at, had ammonia thrown in his eyes, petrol bombed. So he put together a compilation of videos, which he
and
showed
includes that one.
Which one
not
of them
a public
is that?
order event.
Yeah,
well,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
People walk on the street because they
Right.
have a wake.
Yeah.
It's like
they're walking behind a fucking hearse. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to look through the other ones yet. There's supposedly footage from various ones which people like him like to call battles for some reason. I think it's partly because they have no idea what an actual battle is. They like to refer to like a protest as a battle. But there's a bunch of videos there from Grunwick, Chelsea Town Hall, Wood Green demonstration, Southall, the funeral, a number of others. There's quite a few. Maybe worth going through them and checking them out. But yeah, I mean, the way that that's presented, the fact that he was able to access that, present it to the inquiry, and have the inquiry just send it as part of the disclosure of all the opening statement, closing statements, which then.
This is quite interesting because does he represent the Met Police, or does he represent he represents the cops who are no longer part of the police, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that came up after the IPT case, which is that police officers who are no longer part of the police have what must be illegal copies of this stuff.
I'm not sure where he got it from. I'm not sure.
I think they said they were recently digitalized by National Archives. No, I'm not sure.
But these are police surveillance videos, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, because after the IPT, one of Mark Kennedy's handlers provided a bunch of evidence to the inquiry that the police did not have, or at least claimed to the IPT that they did not. And the police kind of responded and are like, well, he had absolutely no business having those documents. And I think there is an issue about, like, these ex-police officers who they're this like weird group of they're not represented by the same lawyers as the police, and I think there is a certain recognition that to some extent their interests are not the same as the interests of the police. Had access to all this stuff and may still have access to it. Who knows what they kept?
Yeah, it says National Archive. For instance, there's also National Archive record of a telephone call between the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary. That's not a film. That's not a film.
No, it's there are, yeah.
I don't think the films
yeah.
are the films. Have you actually seen them, Tom? Are they?
Yeah, they're on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're on there.
Okay.
They're on yesterday's hearing.
Oh,
Evelyn, not
ye of
today.
little faith, thinking I'm making it up, didn't you? Hey,
I was looking for the film. It wasn't there this afternoon. And as
well, it's there fucking now.
always, I was too early. But as always, I couldn't really find them on the inquiry
really trust me.
website.
Yeah.
What you? Shut up.
I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, here. Close.
I mean, it was just. I felt like if it was really like watching it in that comment. I was glad he showed it as part of the submission because I think it's incredibly powerful. You know, and it just. And pulled the rug in from underneath Oliver Saunders's arguments from yesterday, but it did feel. I felt kind of weirdly like inappropriate to watch somehow. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It was like a bit like, oh, she's only just seen this.
Yeah.
But I think it was really important that they showed the fact and underlined the fact that she'd only just had a chance to see it, that this is the kind of detail that they're keeping, and they're using it to justify their behavior, which is just such a different worldview. And I thought it was the other thing that was really powerful about her barrister's submission was just saying at the end that, you know, the Met have apologized to all kinds of people about all kinds of things during these proceedings, but they've never apologized to Celia Stubbs for the 20 years of spying on her, at least 20 years.
Yeah, and then Mitting went like, yeah, but I'm not a police. Well, he didn't say that, but I'm not going to apologize. That's not up to me, which was not the most kind answer you could give. But you could have said, yeah, you deserve an apology, or
he could have just said, I hope people, you know, that's what he said, wasn't it? He said, I hope that, you know, the people you've addressed that to consider that request. He could have left it at that. But he just followed it up with a slightly snidey sounding.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be. I'm not going to do that for you.
Right.
Yeah. I thought that I thought that Charlotte's submissions were incredibly strong this afternoon. I thought it was really. I think she. I mean, like, you know, obviously it's all fucking. You know, what the law is and stuff, which is not my area, but I thought it was very strongly and powerfully done. Like, what were people's thoughts on that?
I thought she was fantastic. I mean, I kind of share your this is not my way of approaching it, and I much prefer the kind of, you know, this is just ethically and morally deplorable stance. But Charlotte incredibly clearly kind of set out, you know, what the law is and what the kind of British establishment believes its own values are, and then just really demonstrated how the police are just a bunch of depraved hooligans who are undermining all of that. And I could actually, I was saying when she was talking, like, I can totally imagine that it could be hard for someone like Lord Justice Mitting to stand alongside so-called subversives and, you know, a ragtag bunch of activists. But listening to Charlotte, I could also imagine that it would be very, very hard for him to stand alongside a bunch of, you know, misogynist hooligans who were flouting the law in that way. Like, it really, she just brought across just how unpleasant the SDS were, and how actually even by the kind of, the values that the British establishment holds dear, like, they really were beyond the pale.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think what she's doing is really giving the inquiry a way you know, a way forwards, a way to move away from the police's position, you know, where they might not have, I don't know, they might not have, it's that legal, you know, legal precedent argument that really, you know, gives them that opportunity, whereas we've tried just kind of stating the moral case for years and it's not really got us anywhere. So this is just kind of opening a chink up and making a lot, you know, different positions seem possible for them, which you can see it, you know, the Counsel to the Inquiry's position has really shifted as a result.
There's definitely a lot of responses to this legal point, you know, that like pretty much all the police and state lawyers are like kind of addressing, oh, it'll be wrong, it'd be very wrong, very unfair and very wrong to consider the law.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point, sorry, I mean, the whole point is that they're not allowed to make findings of legal liability, are they? But they were never suggesting they were it was just a straw man argument that the police lawyers were arguing against.
I think Charlotte handled that really well in pointing out that it's not a case of the inquiry seeking to make a legal judgments. It's just that those legal judgments are required to ascertain the
terms of reference.
Yeah, to meet the terms of reference in terms of the justification of these deployments in the first place.
Yeah, I'm glad she had a bit of comeback on their submissions. I enjoyed that very much because, yeah, like I say, her points have clearly rattled everybody on the other side.
I mean, I think it's also really important to know that, I mean, if you look at, I mean, I have read the written statement in detail, and it's absolutely full of contemporary sources. The most important one being this Policy Studies Institute Policing in Action report from 1983. That provide evidence of what policing culture was at the time, and it's, you know, it's autobiographies of former police officers and former Metropolitan Police Commissioners. It's studies that were carried out on behalf of the police at the time into the state of policing, and all of that is evidence that, you know, the police have been banging on this, what we've been calling the life on Mars argument, where they're saying, you know, you can't judge the police by the standards of today. But actually, you know, she's just gone back and said, well, you know, this is what people were saying about them back in the day, and the police have known about these cultural problems since 1983. And all of that, yet again, is work that has been done by our side. So the police have not, in all of their whinging about the standards of today and how we need to look at it in the context of the time, they haven't come forward and said, you know, we had serious problems of misogyny and racism and corruption in the police force at that time, and that's why all of this stuff happened. You know, it was still on us to put all of that stuff before the inquiry. And I mean, I recommend looking at the written report, because it's really packed with basically what is new evidence.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that all this new evidence is here, available in these last few days of closing statement, and as yet the TV news media haven't picked up at all on the end of tranche one of this incredibly expensive and long-running public inquiry. I saw on Twitter some defense of that from some TV producer, saying that, well, they covered the start of the inquiry, however long ago that was.
Yeah, that was like a good 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
I just want to
Okay.
say one thing quickly because I'm going to have to go. I've got to make dinner. But I've been listening and it's very interesting. And the thing that I really was very impressed that the council to the inquiry did was make that connection between Phil Cooper and Jim Boyling. You remember that?
Yeah.
I thought-
No.
Yeah, he said like, and Phil Cooper was like an alcoholic and, you know, had lots of relationships with, I think it's Phil Cooper, HN 300, no, Chris?
Pickford.
I'm sure
Pickford.
it's
Pickford.
Cooper. Well, anyway,
Pickford.
one of them. And then he definitely said, like Jim Boyling later, had a, yeah, Pickford, you're right, had a child, yeah. So I think as Dave Morris often says, we are winning, it feels. It does feel like we have pushed, you know, things into a kind of an acceptance that, you know, whether we can, whether there's a, it depends, it's what I said before, really. It's just about what happens, what we actually do for the future. But I do feel like we've kind of had a bit of a victory. Is that,
I mean,
is
I
that
think
naive?
we
Is that naive?
definitely are making an impact, definitely making an impact. And as I've always said, I think they will cancel it before it's finished. So, you know, we've got to try and make an impact in this early tranche.
It's weird, isn't it? Because with the evidence that we've heard, in some ways it would seem perverse to come up with any other conclusions than the CTI did. But at the same time, it was still a surprise that he actually said that. If you know what I mean, it's just
Yeah, despite the fact that it's bleedingly obvious, it's still taken them this long to even show that they've had a flicker of understanding of the issues.
Yeah.
I was also really surprised by the Council to Inquiry statement. It's pretty radical if you look at it, you know, like compared to anything they've said until now.
Yeah.
totally.
Although,
Yeah.
I mean, I was more surprised by the, well, I mean, I'm always slightly surprised by the just complete inadequacy of the police defence. I mean, they really just have nothing to say for themselves, but their own lawyers saying that, yes, of course, it all was completely unjustifiable. And it was just like, what?
And who was it that came back from a holiday and was complaining about it and saying he hadn't read anything? Was it Somers?
Yeah, I mean,
Skelton or
that
Saunders?
Sanders.
I mean, it was just a bit of a
Sanders.
victory just to hear them say, oh, yes, well, of course it was all unjustified, but, you know, they almost said it like an aside, but we haven't actually heard them really say that before.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that was really different. You know, I went into this like, okay, I can go somewhere else on the first day because nothing's going to happen anyway. Just to come back like really surprised, you know. Things are moving.
One thing, one thing I would say that until with that CTI released that his closing statement was a week or so ago, I don't think any of us thought it would have that much impact, these closing hearings, simply because of the dynamic of it just being read out statements and no cross-examination. I did think it wouldn't, I assumed it would not have any media impact at all. If I'm honest with you, it was only after that it became more significant.
Well, the press conference was pretty good and was covered pretty good.
Yeah.
That was a surprise as well, to be honest.
I mean, does anybody disagree that there's a chance this is the last bit? You know, once they come out with the interim report, there may well be no more hearings, or am I just being very pessimistic?
I was
you are.
thinking, yeah, well, yeah, maybe, but it crossed my mind that you've said that before when I read the Council to Inquiry, like, okay, so maybe they know there's not that much time left, so they can afford to be, well, I won't use the word radical in this context, but, you know, they sort of show their cards what they really think now, because it won't continue anyway. That's what that was one of my thoughts.
They said it will continue, Evelyn, so it must, because they've said it will.
Yeah, but there's the Home Secretary that might No, I agree. And
I
to
Do you
can't
think that
imagine
a
a Home
change of
Secretary
government?
wanting to. Surely not.
Do you think that a
But the
change of
home, I mean, the Home
government?
Secretary, the Home Office's statement gave no indication of that whatsoever. So unless one of us has some inside information from the Home Office, sorry, I just get a bit frustrated, but it's just speculation. We don't know. I'm not saying
I
they could
agree
pull the
with
plug
you, Chris.
tomorrow for
I don't.
sure,
I
but there's
agree.
absolutely no. We have no real reason
says
to think
says our biggest pessimist. You
It's
know.
just paranoia.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a realist. That's why there's no. I need evidence to be pessimistic.
But I
Um,
was wondering, did they say anything about the continuation? They didn't say anything about stopping, but they didn't say like
No, they said they're going to
thanks, see
continue
you
to
next time.
cooperate in the statement, didn't they? So there's no sense that, and they said we want them to get a move on, and then sort of very. I mean, basically, clearly, Suella Braverman didn't write any of those words in that statement because they were relatively polite and didn't give out an air of like malicious contempt to the people that she was addressing.
She would,
So
yeah.
I mean, as I say, that statement. I mean, yeah. I just don't think I don't know.
No,
I
and
can
also I think as well, Chris, that the council inquiry, well, whatever the Home Office are doing, the council inquiry are everything they suggested. You know, they refer to tranche 2 and tranche 3 and tranche 4 and tranche. You know, so they, you know, in that sense, I
Yeah.
think it'd be quite humiliating in a way, but if they pull the plug, I don't think it would be.
And
Also,
and
I
his
was-
state, I don't think there's any sense in his statement that they have inside info because he was looking forward to tranche 2. He was like comparing the stuff that went on there, which goes on later. So I mean, there's no. I
Okay.
mean,
Well, several
you know,
to needing to find out, like, I mean, I think it was counsel to the inquiry who actually said, you know, all of this stuff that I'm saying now is of some interest to us, but actually what's most important is establishing why this carried on after REPA.
Yep, that's true.
So, and the only way they can do that is by continuing the inquiry into the period after REPA.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they just have to continue, don't they, as if it is going to reach the end. And I, you know, maybe I do need to stop being so pessimistic, but yeah, it just maybe it's just a way of making sure that we make every single session or load of hearings count.
sure. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any grounds for I mean, it's just that. I mean, cynicism about what's going to happen is like more than justified. It's just that we don't have any real evidence of that. But you know,
No, of course.
I mean, you know, we're kind of just cast our minds back to 2015. We're pretty shocked that it was called in the first place, weren't we? So, I mean,
And I never thought we'd get as far as we got. But I said that throughout the 10 years of the IPT process as well.
Yeah, exactly. Every stage we've never thought we'd got there. I mean, I really don't think that I thought I'd still be discussing this shit in 2023, I have to say. But yeah, I think we're probably going to have to keep banging on about it for quite a bit longer, regardless, because as was mentioned earlier, you know, we really want something really concrete in terms of outcomes that can affect the present day, which we haven't yet. You know, hopefully, well, we haven't. You know, we've still got a big battle on with that, haven't we, with the Chiz Act?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just going back to a point we were talking about 10 minutes ago, because I missed my chance to jump in, was that Evelyn, you probably if you remember reading sort of earlier histories of the beginnings of what became MI5 and special branch. Do you remember them talking about the reason why there wasn't any secret police in the UK, because it was thought of as completely un-British and underhand and not the kind of thing we do in this country? Do you remember that they'd say
Yeah. Well,
why...
we've had the same discussion in the Netherlands, saying that if you have a secret, you always have to keep intelligence gathering and police separate, because as soon as the the Secret Service, the security service, gets the right to arrest people and to prosecute. Well, that's how the Third Reich started. You know, that you had you know, like you should never have them combined. Well, in fact, of course, special branch is an intelligence, or you know, the STS was the intelligence gathering unit for special branch, who has indeed the power to start a prosecution and arrest people, which has also happened. You know, like this is. There have been some examples in the very early days at, you know, when the STS just started, when people were sort of targeted and sought out to see if they could prosecute them, get them into jail for either a couple of weeks or months, so that people would be, you know, scared off to become and yeah. The one very good example we cannot use because the person involved doesn't want it, but
Yeah.
there's more examples of this. So there is indeed, there's a big danger if you combine secret police, if you combine intelligence gathering and you know, the power to prosecute and arrest people.
Yeah, but my point was, an older historical one is that somehow that spying and surveillance in general was like underhand and not the kind of thing that the British people would put up with. I don't know if you remember reading that. Certainly in the sort of the early, you know, that was the view in the 19th century, at least the official view. It's bullshit, obviously, but it just goes back to the idea that nobody, that prior to Reaper, that nobody thought that surveillance was a bad thing, or in some ways morally questionable. Clearly, you know, people have been thinking that it's a dodgy thing to do for hundreds of years.
There's a similarity there with the fact that the UK as yet doesn't have national ID, and previous Tory MPs, when the idea of ID being pushed on us was happening, would be like, that's really un-British. It's like you know, the Nazis demanding your papers in the street. So that kind of fantasy of Britishness has kind of saved us at a surface level from national ID, but obviously on a
yeah, but not from other things. You know, like the Economic League, as you may know, was set up after the Russian Revolution. To make sure that, and together with MI6 and former MI5, to keep an eye on workers and to prevent revolution, you know, coming over to the UK. And this, what we've seen and what I've also written about with Dave Smith now, is that there was always this combination of intelligence service, or the MI5, and secret cabinet committees trying to see how they could undermine possible subversives. And also with the combination with, you know, like, okay, we can't give intelligence to large companies straight away, but we refer people to the Economic League, and if they push a bit harder, they do get information. So this, you know, it's quite obvious. This is from the 70s, that has always been the case. And of course, and you know, like the blacklisting scandal has showed that has continued, and that the STS indeed was, special branch was giving intelligence about individuals to the Economic League and later the consulting agencies. Yeah. And, you know, with all the strikes today, of course, stuff like that is happening still, you know, that it's so easy, like Alison said in the beginning, like to draw these lines from history. It's still happening, you know, like, because large corporations still have all the power in capitalism. I wouldn't think I was going to say this, but yes, that's how things are. And that's pretty depressing, indeed.
I'm
Uh,
going to have to go, and I'm slightly worried that I'm going to cut the stream, so I'm going to try it.
yeah, but I
Or
also think we're kind of done for today.
Done, yeah.
I need some time off as well.
Okay.
I've been up since 4 a.m.
Yeah, sleep. Yeah, well, you live with the sort of
No.
European time frame now.
Nice to see you virtually all. Okay. Let's
Yeah.
try it soon.
Everyone.
Bye.
And Jen,